Well, a few of you have probably noticed that we're having a presidential campaign, and it's already gotten very intense. And although I wouldn't say it's just started, it's certainly in its beginning phases. And it is already so toxic. And no matter where you go, what you do, you can't get away from it. And even if you try to get away from it, you know that's not really the answer either. And it is very easy to feel that the national psyche is infected. And as I said, in some ways, it only promises to get worse. So I want to think about all this in terms of what A Course in Miracles has to say. And I want to begin by reading the first paragraph in Lesson 68 of A Course in Miracles that says, "Love holds no grievances. You who were created by love like itself can hold no grievances and know yourself. To hold a grievance is to forget who you are. To hold a grievance is to see yourself as a body. To hold a grievance is to let the ego rule your mind and to condemn the body to death. Perhaps you do not yet fully realize just what holding grievances does to your mind. It seems to split you off from your source and make you unlike him. It makes you believe that he is like what you think you have become, for no one can conceive of his creator as unlike himself." So you take this basic metaphysical principle, and first of all, as we discuss so often, A Course in Miracles tells us you think you have many different problems, but you really only have one, and that is your separation from God. And the Course in Miracles does not present itself as some lofty set of principles that have no application to our daily lives. Quite to the contrary, it says often, this is a practical course. So here you have the US presidential campaign, but we have no real problem except our separation from God. The Course in Miracles says God is love. You are an idea in the mind of God. God or love is all there is. When we love, we are quite literally being ourselves. When we withhold love, i.e., have a grievance towards anyone for any reason, we are in a state of self-annihilation. We are annihilating psychically ourselves, not that we can. Because what God created is eternal, and that means you. So when I withhold love from anyone, I'm actually splitting my own mind and putting myself in this deep discomfort, which then my ego mind, which projected onto the other person all the blame that would lead to my withhold of love, to my grievance to begin with, tells me they're to blame. Donald Trump is to blame, or Cruz is to blame, or Rubio is to blame, or Hillary is to blame, or Bernie is to blame. I don't think anybody's saying John Kasich is to blame, but whatever. MSNBC is to blame, Fox is to blame, and so forth. And so, once again, the Course in Miracles says we project outside ourselves both the source of the problem and also the source of our salvation. The source of our salvation being that they would be different. But the Course in Miracles says the problem is within you, and the answer is within you. The problem is with you in the sense of projection of all this guilt onto other people to begin with, and salvation lies within you in that the only salvation is forgiveness. The only salvation is our willingness to see beyond what the body's eyes perceive to what the heart knows to be true. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio, and Bernie Sanders, and John Kasich, and anybody else who might be running, is an innocent child of God. The bodily level of experience, their guilt, they are showing you in order to give you the opportunity to see that little bit of a gap that still exists between you and your enlightened self. And actually, I say that little bit of a gap, but we all know when we are screaming at the television for whatever reason that it's not a little gap at all. So what do? Well, some people say, well, I just can't have anything to do with politics because it is so toxic. I just have to stay away from all that. The Course in Miracles is not about ignoring the illusions of the world. The Course in Miracles is about transforming the darkness of the world. The Course in Miracles is about preparing what in the Course in Miracles is called the teachers of God. The teacher of God, the Course in Miracles says, is anyone who chooses to be one. They are those who have answered the call. And to teach in Course in Miracles is to demonstrate. So we're not taught to turn away from the darkness in A Course in Miracles. We're taught to look through the darkness. And when you look through the illusion, you see the potential that exists within any situation, the potential for enlightenment. Now, American democracy represents a collective experience. And so we make collective decisions just like we make individual decisions. And the law of cause and effect, which is called in the East karma, leads us to understand that whatever I think will create form on some level, and whatever I do will come back to me on some level. That means not only what I do will come back to me, but what we do will come back to us. And at this point in history, probably, certainly as much as, and it could be argued that more than at any other time in history, our collective decision-making is extremely important. There's a dam in Iraq, in the town of Mosul, and engineers are now warning that this dam could collapse any day now. And it is estimated that if this dam breaks, between 1 million to 1.5 million people will probably die. So there is no spiritual justification for turning our backs and turning away from politics because it's quote-unquote toxic. If we had never invaded Iraq, my point being there, ISIL would not be in charge of Mosul, and the Mosul Dam would not be in the condition that it is. That is just one of many, many situations. That one, of course, has to do with its effect on people on the other side of the world. But when you're talking about GMOs or rigged economy or anything else, these are issues that don't just affect other people, but which will surely in time, if they are collective dysfunctions, affect all of us individually. Now, American democracy has always been an interesting, sometimes tragic mix of the best and the worst of human impulses. It has always represented some of the most enlightened aspects of the human mind, and it has always demonstrated, sometimes more than others, some of the baser instincts of humanity. On one hand, you have a country that was founded on some of the most enlightened principles ever, encoded into any founding documents. The very notion of the founding of this country was an enlightened idea. But we know that many of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence were themselves slave owners. So from the very beginning, this country represented a tension between profoundly enlightened principles and then a failure to embody, not only a failure to embody the best, but a willingness to embody the worst. Slavery, genocide of the Native American people, and so forth. Now, in A Course in Miracles, it tells us that there is no such thing as a neutral thought. All thought creates form on some level. So as individuals, what we're taught is that if you wake up in the morning and you do not proactively seek to use the energies of your life to channel the good, the holy, the true, and the beautiful, because all thought creates form on some level, because there is no such thing as a neutral thought, if we are not proactively cultivating the good, the power, the strength, the love, the creativity, the enlightenment that you're capable of, your energy that is not proactively and consciously put in the service of love will be put in the service of fear. So on any given day of our lives, and really in any moment of our lives, where the decision, either consciously or unconsciously, is not, may I be used by love, that energy will be used by fear. And that's what neuroses are. Freud defined neurosis as separation from self. And when I am being love, I am being my enlightened self. That's what enlightenment is. Light, the Course in Miracles says, means understanding. When we stand in love, we understand, number one, who we are, and number two, why we're here. Who am I? I am a thought in the mind of God, and why am I here? In order to receive that thought and extend it. And every situation, the Course says, every moment, you are deciding whether or not to do that. You are deciding consciously or you are deciding unconsciously. But if I do not extend love, that energy does not get diminished. I can mismanage my personal power, but I cannot diminish my personal power. So if I'm not using my power as an extension of love, the Course says, then I am using my power as a projection of fear. So if I'm not nice, I'm going to be nasty. If I'm not loving, I'm going to be harsh. If I am not doing the work, serving the force of good, which will then ride through and drive through my power, then that power will be used the opposite way. That is as true of the collective as it is true of the individual. So what happens in the United States, as happens in every country, is that every generation is the steward of the collective unfoldment of the history. One of the things we talk about here, which I think is a fascinating thing, this idea of honoring your incarnation. If you're a woman or if you're a man, if you're gay or if you're straight, if you're transgender, that brings a whole interesting thing into that. If you're a Jew, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Hindu, if you're a Buddhist. It's so interesting, including if you're American, if you're Russian, if you're Chinese. This whole idea of ethnicity and culture, religion, that you dwell, your soul is none of those things. But your incarnation is such that your soul is dwelling within this world in that space. So you, as the adult generation at any time, along with everyone else who is an adult, so if you're black, you along with other blacks. If you're Jewish, you along with other Jews. If you're American, you along with other Americans. Stand in a space of responsibility that there is to be assumed from A Course in Miracles perspective. that wherever we are, this is not an accident. And too often we're looking outside our own circumstances for what we are to do with our lives. Rather, the Course in Miracles says, then realizing what we are to do with our lives has to do with who we are to be. And so, to be an American, given the power of a country with this much force behind it, due to our size, due to our technical capacity, due to our military capacity, there are so many ways in which when America gets it right, we have been, and I believe continue to be, a blessing on the world. But when America has gotten it wrong, whether we're talking about slavery or we're talking about genocide of Native Americans or military misadventures or anything else, then America, just like any country, just like we as individuals, are either extensions of love or projections of fear. Now, when it comes to politics, over the last few decades, some of the best and the brightest in America have gone neutral on the subject. Just didn't want anything to do with it. But from a metaphysical perspective, if we, generations are like chains in a link, right? I mean, links in a chain. And when one breaks, there's a problem. And with some situations, you can go a generation, you can go maybe 2 generations, you can go maybe 3 generations. But what has happened, and it's happened for various sociological and political reasons, which are not necessarily directly relevant here. For a myriad of reasons, some of the greatest creativity, most noble thinking, noble behavior has not been turned towards politics. Now, what does that mean? That means that the field of our collective decision-making has not been filled with enough of the better angels of the American psyche. And collectively, just like individually, if you do not proactively place something in the service of love, don't go being all mystified later on when that same power got placed in the service of fear. Don't just blame it on Donald Trump. Because when we leave a field open, and that's basically what we have done, if we have not proactively created generation after generation a collective field of wisdom, then no matter how wise we might seek to be individually, the field of the collective is abdicated, is left into, and thereby basically placed into the hands of forces that would seek to use it for its purposes. This is no different collectively than it is individually. Now, for those of us who are dedicated to transformation, what has happened over the last few decades is that the basic trend towards personal transformation, the basic trend towards spiritual transformation, the basic trend towards higher consciousness, at least in our country, has been a very, very individually oriented personal pursuit. And in some ways, this has only increased the problem. James Hillman wrote an essay, the last, I think, that was published before he died, something along the line of 100 years of psychotherapy and the world is more messed up than ever. Because he was talking about the fact that too often we use the pursuit of higher consciousness and spiritual healing to address what we see as our own individual problems, when in fact so many of our own individual problems, when seen outside the context of the larger social dysfunction, cannot be seen clearly. Many years ago, if somebody had a problem with their teenager, they would go to a therapist and say, "Fix my kid." But A long time ago, it became a mainstream understanding that you cannot understand a child outside the context of the family system. We all understand that now. We get that. Oh, yeah, like the mother doesn't matter. Ha! Like the father doesn't matter. Like the marriage of the parents doesn't matter. Like the sibling rivalry doesn't matter. It's like we get that. You can't talk about how the child is doing outside the context of how the family system is functioning. And just in the same way, it's time for us to realize that you can't really understand where any of us are individually in the most profound way without addressing dysfunctions of the society in which we're dwelling. And even before this presidential campaign, particularly with electronic media and so forth, we're all living at the effect of a constant bombardment of stimulus which is meaningless at best and genuinely vicious at worst. Now, like I said, and the Course in Miracles says, that's what the ego is. The ego is suspicious at best, and the ego is vicious at worst. Now, one of the things that, let's say you're in AA, let's say you go to a 12-step program. You know, one of the things about drug addiction and alcoholism is that if you've really got the issue, you get to the point of realizing, and you are supported in this realization by others, who make it clear and help you get clear that this is no joke. If you don't address this, it will kill you. And until then, you're in denial. Oh, I can handle it. Until then, you're in denial. Oh, I'll beat it. I'm on top of this. And we are in denial about our lives collectively. We've been so blessed living in this country. We have been so privileged living in this country. We inherited such blessing that we have this delusion it is guaranteed to continue, when the facts would argue otherwise. There are just so many generations that you can corrupt your food supply and this be okay. It can just go on so long messing with climate change the way you do, and entire systems not begin to implode. And now what's happening, of course, is that we have all kinds of evidence where the implosion is actually happening, and we're still standing in denial even while looking at the evidence. Now, the idea that there's somebody out there who's going to fix it is a delusion as well, because the call of history at this time is not the idea that there is one person who is going to fix it, because these are collective decisions. Politics, at its best, is a field of wise collective decision-making. Now, one of the things that has fascinated me, and I think part of it has to do with the fact that although I was a little girl, I remember Bobby Kennedy. And although I was a little girl, I remember Martin Luther King. I was a little girl, but I actually have the historical memory of a time when we could look at people and go, wow, they represent the best of us, and they are standing in the public field. They represent the best of us, and they are standing in the political field. They represent the best of us, and they are standing in the field that has to do with collective decisions. After the assassinations, after the drama of the 60s, once again, much of it fascinating, but not much of it directly relevant in this conversation, we began to think that the only place that real change and real creativity could occur would be on an individual level. It's kind of funny to me because I get emails all the time, I'm sure you do too, on the internet, people talking about how it's time for us to become a collective field of wisdom. But so many people in talking about that will not talk about it related to politics. And the Course in Miracles says that wherever there is the problem, that's where God puts the remedy. So the Course in Miracles is not about saying, you have a broken hand, let's look at that ankle. The Course in Miracles says just like you wouldn't go to a doctor if you have a broken leg and have the doctor say, let's look at that hand, the Course in Miracles says we are not to avoid the darkness of the world. That's not what the Course in Miracles is about, although there are many people who clearly selectively read it. The Course in Miracles says that in response to the darkness of the world, God has sent his teachers. In response to the darkness of the world, that is why there is the plan for the teachers of God. And the plan for the teachers of God, and as I said, who is that? That means anyone who chooses to be one. The Course in Miracles says they come from all religions and from no religions. They are those who have heard the call. Many are called, the Course in Miracles says, and few care to listen. But the call is going out to all of us all the time. Now, the Course in Miracles says we have highly individualized curriculums. The call might be going out to you, obviously having to do with your personal life, all of us having to do with our personal relationships and challenges and so forth. But it's also calling out to you, maybe the call is going out to you to be part of the transformation in business, to be part of the transformation in science, to be part of the transformation in fashion, to be part of the transformation in art, to be part of the transformation in movies, to be part of the transformation in acting, to be part of the transformation in whatever your dharma, your passion, that spirit telling you, go there, do that, stand within that space as something higher and bigger. And the more you mature socially, you know that you have the responsibility, not only as a parent, if you have responsibility as a woman, as a man, you have responsibility if you're gay, if you have responsibility if you're black, if you have responsibility if you're Jewish, and so forth. And we have responsibility as Americans. And there is a call going out. Now, the ego mind says, no, I like it better when we just blame Donald Trump. I like it better when we just blame Marco Rubio. I like it better when we just blame Hillary Clinton. I like it better when we just blame Bernie Sanders, although I cannot imagine anybody. I like it better when we just blame Ted Cruz or whatever. But that is not the spiritual call that is being made. The spiritual call is that we must, at this quite late hour, retrieve the best in terms of a collective field of consciousness that can be, has been, and still can be American politics. Now, I'm on my Facebook page quite a bit. I'm on Twitter and all of that. It's actually very good for me as a writer, and I'm sure other writers feel this way. It's a fascinating, I notice I'm finishing a book right now, and I was telling my publisher, I think Facebook has actually helped me and Twitter, because you have to do it in 140 characters, right? It's really interesting, but it's a constant writing. But one of the things, and people who are on my Facebook page know, I remember one night I said, and on Facebook, if somebody says something negative or critical, you keep it on there. But I have a line called hateful. Hateful about me, hateful about any groups, hateful about whatever. Hateful, you're off. So I said one night, I want to hear, and this was before the primaries and the caucuses began. I said, I want to hear who you are leaning towards in your support in the presidential campaign, but only positive conversation. If it's personally demonizing toward any candidate, I'm just going to delete it. And something like 2,000 people commented. And it was exhilarating. And one of the things that blows me away sometimes is that all of us can look on the internet, all of us can look out in our society and go, oh, people can be so mean. People can be so hateful. People can be so rude. But it's important for us to also remember, and if we don't see it, it's important for us to see our own responsibility in cultivating it. And that's how noble people can be, how intelligent people can be, how kind people can be, and how beautiful people can be. But politics is not a place to not put your beauty and not put your kindness and not put your nobility. And what I saw on Facebook that night and what I've seen elsewhere, I saw when we did our own campaign. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and I've experienced it firsthand. I've experienced it because of my own personal historic memory, because of my age. I've experienced it because I know politicians, and I've been up close and personal with some situations, plus my own run. It can be as beautiful an endeavor and as noble a pursuit, certainly, as any other. And one of the things that I saw that night on Facebook was all these people who had been told, don't even post if you're going to bring anything that is personally demonizing towards any candidate, don't even post. But what people did post was not only, quote unquote, nice, so intelligent, so noble, and so important. You know, with Sister Giant, we've done this congressional candidate summit because, having run myself, I know how difficult it is, I know it's involved to some extent, and there are wonderful people running all over the country. But I see, and you see it in the media, you see it by that I mean on the internet, people will spend so much more time putting up attacks about the candidates they don't want, rather than intelligent and noble and enlightened commentary and articles about what they do want. Now, any of us can say, well, but where do I go for that? Your own page. That's where you go for that. You know, I had a very close friend named Walter Capps, and he was a congressman. He died a few years ago. He was a congressman from Santa Barbara. I was living there at the time, and he told me about something that happened when he went to Washington. He said, you know, one night we were working out some bill, he said, and it was going late into the night, the Democrats and the Republicans. He said, Marianne, it was everything you would want politics to be. There was such compromise. There was such creativity. There was such a presentation of the high-minded vision of the liberals and the high-minded visions of the Republicans. He said, I was so excited to be there. It was so exhilarating. It was so wonderful. And you know what? We got to something. We came up with something. We came up with a compromise. He said about 2 in the morning, Newt Gingrich came in and he said, no, none of that. We're doing this. And that could have been a Democrat in some other circumstance. But the point was that he'd seen the beauty of what it could be. I remember several years ago, I was visiting Washington, and Dennis Kucinich is a good friend of mine, and we were at the Capitol, and he was taking me to lunch in the Capitol lunchroom for the congressman. And Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, who I think at that time was still a congressman, I'm not sure, the very conservative senator from South Carolina, right? North Carolina? South Carolina. Was coming out of the elevator. And I remembered Lindsey Graham from the Clinton impeachment trials and how he was on television all the time. The elevator door opens. I'm standing there with Dennis, obviously a very progressive congressman at the time. And Lindsey Graham is coming out of the elevator. And I see Dennis go, hey, Lindsey. Lindsey goes, hey, Dennis, how you doing? Like bromance, right? I get into the elevator and I say to Dennis, oh, I can't stand him. And Dennis said to me, what are you talking about? I said, well, I remember him from the Clinton impeachment. He was horrible. He said, Marianne, he is a great guy. We do stuff together all the time. I said, what are you talking about? I've seen him on TV. He said, that's just TV. Thanks, TV, because that's poisoning it for the rest of us. You know, Nancy Reagan died yesterday. And I met her a few years ago, and she was working on stem cell research. That became a cause for her after her husband got Alzheimer's. And I had seen a documentary about her. And when I met her, I said to her, you know, I have to tell you, I think when you were First Lady, I kind of had some things wrong about you. So I'm sorry. She said, that's okay. I had some things wrong myself. And I remember one night I was at a party here in Los Angeles quite a few years ago. I think it was during the 80s, I guess. No. It would have been the 90s because it was after Reagan was president. And I was at this party, and everybody was very, very dressed up. And there were only around 30 people there. And there was this, and I looked up, and there was this very, very tall man. I had not realized how tall he was. I don't know why. Very tall. And such stature, like, whoa, white tails. He had on white tails. And he said, he didn't know who I was, obviously. He said, "Ronald Reagan, how do you do?" And I remember in that moment, because of my political beliefs, it was like my mind was jangled. And I realized how often in my life I have allowed politics, just like we allow any other reason, to be used by our ego mind to keep us from seeing what lay beyond. Now, sometimes people think, well, I have to be angry. I have to be angry. I have to have judgments. Like God needs me to police the universe. I have to make a stand against these people. We have to make a stand, it is true, against injustice. We have to make a stand against unjust systems. We do not have to make a stand against individuals in a way that demonizes them. And one of the things I've seen in my own life, and I've seen it more in my personal relationships than anywhere else, the ego mind says, if I forgive that person, I will be taken advantage of. If I forgive this person, it will be like I'm condoning what they do. If I forgive this person, then who's going to stand for righteousness and integrity? But that's all the Course in Miracles says, a trap of the ego. Because when I'm not forgiving, when I'm not standing there available to the knowledge, to the recognition that someone is an innocent child of God, loved by God as much as I am, then I'm actually allowing my own energy to be used for purposes of self-annihilation, psychic annihilation, because of what we said at the beginning. Anytime we are about to judge someone, the Course in Miracles says, imagine a sword that is falling on their head, but know that it's falling on you as well. Now, I want to say something to the people of Los Angeles, and I was going to say this next week because I won't be here for a while after that. This is not just my belief. This is my experience. You change a conversation in Los Angeles, you change a conversation in the world. This is the communications capital of the world. You change the conversation in LA. There is no country that God loves more than any other country. The Course in Miracles says all of the children of God are special and none of the children of God are special. So there's no, when we talk about America being blessed, America is blessed to the extent to which we bless. So this isn't about making Los Angeles special, or making America special, or making any individual special. But it is about saying, as the Course in Miracles says, we are all special and none of us are special. So as we stand in the space, and all of this is just a tweaking of our own perspective. What we do here is not about what you then go out and do. This study, this conversation is about who we are. And who we are, we have all been crouching. We do not take responsibility. We don't take enough responsibility as mothers. We don't take enough responsibility as fathers. We don't take enough responsibility as lovers. We don't take enough responsibility as spouses. We don't take enough responsibility as friends. We don't take enough responsibility as citizens. We are not dwelling in the fullness of our own bigger self. And then we wonder why our circumstances are small. And we're afraid to because we feel, oh, I just can't take that on. I don't have the bandwidth for that. I don't have the space for that. I don't have the energy for that. I'm just trying to get by. But your world expands when your thinking expands. and your world constricts when your thinking constricts. So there are so many opportunities that each and every one of us have. When you think about how much time we spend every day allowing our psychic energy to be leached by meaningless preoccupations. Every time we read a ridiculous magazine or a ridiculous article or a ridiculous book rather than something deep and meaningful. How many times do we choose to be part of conversations that are just ridiculously unimportant? You know, in Buddhism, Buddha talked about the Noble Eightfold Path. And part of it is right speech, not just right intention. You know, we all love the intention one because it doesn't call you to actually have to do anything. But right speech and right action. So, the Course in Miracles says that God has the answer to every problem the moment the problem occurs. So the fact that the American presidential campaign is so toxic, if all we do is criticize the people who are part of it, all we are doing is contributing to the toxicity. But we can start right here, right now. And we begin by changing a conversation. You know, Werner Erhard, the founder of EST, said you can live your life according to circumstances, or you can live your life according to a vision. And that vision comes from our own imagination. That vision comes from a conversation in our head. Everything new emerges from a conversation. It's a conversation in the culture, but the conversation begins in someone's head. And the reason freedom matters, the reason free speech matters. You know, once again, we take so much for granted. You know, I have a lot of opinions about things, and I'm so aware how lucky I am to live in a culture. When you look at what some women and some people just expressing their opinions that are fraction is out there as mine, are being tortured in prisons around the world as we speak. When you think of the blogger in Saudi Arabia, that young man who simply wrote a blog that there should be greater freedom of expression. But he was given 100 lashes, I think, and you know what they do when they give you 100 lashes? That means this is a whipping. So they give you 10, and then that almost kills you, so they have to put you in the hospital for you to get well enough for them to lash you some more. This is not back in the Middle Ages. This is today. How fortunate we are that the police aren't coming in. They might roll their eyes about us, but they're not coming in here to arrest us for being here. You know, it's so easy for us to get so concerned, which we must be, about what's wrong, that we don't do enough active appreciating of what is right and vigilant, proactive cultivation of what is right in order that it might be that which we hand down to future generations. Holding the tension between the two is not easy. It is a job for grown-ups. So when we start a new conversation first in our head, that American politics should not be like this. Now, we can talk about all of the different reasons why it became like this, primarily, obviously, the undue influence of money on our political system. But you don't wait till the overturn of Citizens United before cultivating something beautiful. You start cultivating something beautiful by actively participating in what that looks like. That's your own Facebook page. That's your own Twitter. That's your own Instagram. And you know, if you're looking at these things and everything else, if you look at these things from a metaphysical perspective, when you look at the way Buddha talked about right speech, other people might not hear you, but think that the universe has ears. Everything we say, everything we do, we are creating. Your entire life is an art form. Think of your entire life as an act of creation, because it is. There's no book that you could write, there's no painting you could paint, there's no movie you could direct. There's nothing you could create that is more significant than your life. What kind of a man are you? What kind of a woman are you? And like I said, too many of us are crouching. We're not standing up in our nobility and in our strength. And right now, we are undergoing something in this particular presidential campaign, which is a profound collective mirror to us. This is what it has become. And this stuff is dangerous. We can't look and say, oh, politics just doesn't matter. And you look at the Mosul Dam, it doesn't matter. Because 1 million people are going to die if that thing falls. And it was an absurd, and that is putting it as kindly as possible, decision that led to the unfoldment of that particular circumstance. That's just one. There are so many. So yes, who becomes president does matter very much. Yes, what happens politically happens very much, just like what happens artistically matters. What happens in every other field matters. What happens to the Muslims matter. What happens to gay people matters. What happens to black people matters. What happens to Jews matter. What happens to women matters. It all matters, and that's really it. Does life matter? Because each and every one of us, every day, make a decision. Are you playing life deep, or are you playing it shallow? And too many Americans are playing it way, way too shallow. And if you are even at a lecture like this tonight, or you're a student of the Course in Miracles, or whatever path you're on that would make you even interested in the kind of conversation we're having tonight, by definition, you're already seeking greater depth. But what I propose to you tonight is that this depth cannot just be individual. Not anymore. I don't think it ever could be. And the fact that we made it too often only about me and my healing and my circumstances and my transformation is what allowed us to get where we are to begin with. If we do not consciously and proactively claim the light, we will be at the effect of the darkness. That's what the Course in Miracles says. If you do not proactively say, I choose the sane space, then we will be at the effect of the insane. And Gandhi said the problem with the world is that humanity is not in its right mind. And that is the problem of the world. It is insane what we are doing to our planet. It is insane what we are doing to each other. It is insane that we are not appreciating and cultivating the blessings that we have been given. It is insane that we are allowing so many children to suffer and even starve on this planet. It is insane that we are allowing anyone to starve on this planet. But it's just like, with 12 steps or anything else. You admit that. You admit that. And then something begins. The Course in Miracles says salvation begins when we consider the possibility there might be another way. And that other way would be that our collective decision-making, our collective transformation becomes wise and becomes profound and becomes cultured and becomes sophisticated. I was reading about Nancy Reagan, and I was reading that when President Reagan was shot, that the first person she had come into the hospital room, because for a few days they wouldn't let anyone in, that bullet hit close to his heart. And he could have easily died from that. And others did, obviously. And she didn't let anybody in the hospital room for a few days. And when she did, the first person that she invited in was Tip O'Neill, who was the Democratic Speaker of the House at the time. And she said that, and I was watching the news, and it said that when Tip O'Neill came into the hospital room, he and President Reagan, he got down on his knees and held hands with President Reagan, and together they read the 23rd Psalm. The fact that everything is so debased now, don't give in. Don't give in. We're giving in. And we're allowing ourselves to be part of it. And I'm not saying nothing debased happened in politics during that time. But I'm saying that when we see examples of where it can be beautiful, and particularly if you see candidates, don't waste your time on, to disagree with someone, absolutely. You had to take a stand if Hitler was there, of course, to take a stand. But to watch that noble path, that eightfold path of right speech, to make your criticism sophisticated criticism. Look what has happened. My daughter is 25. So during the Republican debate when, Trump started talking about the size of his hands and, my daughter's 25 and I texted her, oh my God, you would not believe what he just said. But if she had been 10, I would have been horrified if she'd been watching. And that's a big deal. And I was horrified for the 10 and the 15-year-olds who were watching and the parents of, who were thinking, I really wanted my 12-year-old to be able to watch this. Right? So, what does that mean in your life? Well, the Course in Miracles, one of the things that's so beautiful is that the guidance system is internal. So what you are supposed to do in your life, the Course in Miracles says we are to make no decisions for ourselves, that we are to ask inside, the voice for God to direct us in all things. What candidate are you supposed to support? That's your business. But if you support them, really support them, and support them elegantly and eloquently. We don't go the extra mile. We in our society today, it's like people are too cool to care. If you act like you really feel passionately about an issue, there are too many people who will roll their eyes like somehow if you were really cool, you would have this like fake equanimity about it. This is not a time, ladies and gentlemen, to not be passionate. It's not a time to not care. It's not a time to be not to be very upset about certain things that are happening. Police brutality, things such as that, rigged economy. It is time for us to be extremely passionate about these things. There is nothing spiritual or holy about being quiet if the house is burning down. The most holy thing you can do is yell, fire! But let's be very, very clear as we do so, that from this night forward, all of us who resonate with the idea know that as Americans, we have a job to do. One of the things that I love in American history is the role of the Quakers throughout our history. And the abolitionist movement came from the Quakers. The Quakers who were just sitting there, seeing the inner light. And they believe in an inner light within every man, woman, and child. And so they deduced that if there's the same inner light between every man, woman, and child, then that means that every man, woman, and child is equal in the eyes of God. That means it doesn't matter what their color, therefore slavery is evil. And years before there was any kind of external abolitionist movement, they were doing small and large acts of bravery and resistance that built up and accumulated in this energy in such a way that the efforts of those obviously who were slaves, who were seeking to resist and seeking to rebel, as well as white people of conscience in America, who were seeking as well to find another way. And ultimately they did. So for those of us, whether we're students of the Course in Miracles or anything else like this, it's kind of a spiritual underground. And to really reweave the field of collective wisdom in America, there's no external action in some broad stroke that any of us can take. Like I said, it's your Facebook page, it's your conversation, it's your support of a candidate. Each and every one of us, whatever you're supposed to do is none of my business. But I know that just by starting these conversations, the Course in Miracles says that an idea grows stronger as it is shared. So if you're going to try to be sane during this presidential season, good luck if you are not yourself proactively participating in an alternative. There is a lot of temptation these days to artificially numb ourselves. There's a lot of faux spiritual justification for turning away because you're an empath and the whole thing is just too toxic. There are a lot of ways the ego can tempt you to do exactly what the ego wants. And that is take your extraordinary power, your unlimited power, and withhold it. Withhold it from people, withhold it from the planet, withhold it from your country, withhold it from your children's children, whether you biologically have children or not, and withhold it from history. But the Course in Miracles makes it very clear, and I think our experience does as well. If we withhold our love, we are not being ourselves. And salvation, the Course in Miracles says, is inside us. Your salvation comes from you. Just as the problem is in you. The problem is in our loveless thinking, and salvation is in our loving thinking. So we have to all pull back right now and go, whoa, the world is really insane. We have to all pull back right now and go, whoa, we got to take a deep breath here. But you don't pull back and then say, I'm leaving. Where are you going to go? It's here. Rather, we pull back, knowing that this conversation that we're having, even if it is not shared in this particular form by many other people, it's the yearning that this conversation represents is in the hearts of millions and millions of people. It is a tragedy that it has come to this. People all over the world look at us and get that it's a tragedy that it's come to this, and get what a tragedy it will be if we don't get this right. So we have to begin by asking God to remove our personal judgment. You know, some of us it's Trump, some of us it's the corporate Democrats, a lot of it's the media. And listen, it's not like there's an inaccurate perspective when we see something that we feel we deeply, deeply disagree with. But when we ourselves are infected by the negativity, everything we do is infused with the consciousness with which we do it. Gandhi said the end is inherent in the means. We were here last week and there was a conversation, and you can feel it within yourself. There's one particular, we all have the particular candidate that we're upset with. And I have mine, like everybody has theirs. Oh. And you say, if it's your personal animus, there's something in you that needs to be cleared. Right? Something is more going on. And so when we can get to the place, not where we're looking away, but where we're looking through, and then join with each other, because ideas, when they are shared, grow stronger, then something, a resonant field of new possibility exists. The Course in Miracles says there is no order of difficulty in miracles. That for every fear-based manifestation, there is in the mind of God the enlightened alternative. For every fear-based manifestation, there is in the mind of God the enlightened alternative. So the fear-based manifestation, just start with the presidential campaign and American politics today. That is a fear-based manifestation. But there is behind that, that is like a veil. It was manifest, it was manufactured by the mind. And if any of us, to any extent, did not work on creating the alternative, then the Course says you are part of it getting to where it is. Because if you're neutrality, there is no such thing as a neutral thought. So the first thing the Course does for all of our experience, whether individual or collective, is taking 100% responsibility. And then we say, okay, so behind this fear-laden manifestation, there is the enlightened potential. But the enlightened potential is like it is a file in the computer that has not been downloaded. We have downloaded. What you see in American politics is what we have collectively downloaded. So the file, the perfect possibility, the Course in Miracles teaches us, that exists, but it exists in the ethers. Like when we talk about how the Star of David and the cross are visual symbols of what happens when they intersect. So the enlightened possibility for politics right now, it's not intersecting the regions of the earth. And the reason it's not intersecting is because human beings aren't downloading it. God cannot do for us what he cannot do through us. And so we make ourselves available tonight as citizens. You know, that's a huge word. And to even be a citizen, not just of America, the United States, but of any free democratic society. It's a fraction. I think it's 1/5 of the world's population. I'm not sure, but I think it's 1/5 of the world's population that actually can vote and actually determine their governmental policies. And that's why when we see the dismantling of American democracy through the undue influence of money and so forth, our being very passionate about this is appropriate. But the ego would like to use our passion and make it about personal demonization rather than that co-creation of that which is good and holy and beautiful. And so the Course in Miracles says, enter into the holy instant. The holy instant is that place where you get, wow, this is so complicated and it is so convoluted. The Course in Miracles says, you made this. You created this. You can't uncreate it. Place it in the hands of God. And we ask that the enlightened alternative be made manifest. We don't kid ourselves that we know how this would happen. You know, in life, from a miracle-minded perspective, you don't have to know how. You just put yourself at the service of the effort. And then, like I said, things will happen in your life. You will have conversations, you'll be on the bus, you'll be at a dinner party, you'll be on Facebook, you'll be wherever. And you will realize how the universe is calling to you. You. And you'll say, me? And you'll say, yeah, you. The universe will say, yeah, you. You'll say, oh, I don't know. Well, get educated. What do you have to say? And you will find yourself saying something more noble and more savvy and more intelligent and more positive. You'll surprise even yourself. And then you'll be finding yourself in conversation with other people who are having the higher conversation. And you'll find yourself actually enjoying it. And you'll realize that you're not alone. There are people over here having a more positive conversation, and people over there having a more positive conversation, and people over there having a more positive. And by positive, I don't mean pouring pink paint over anything. I don't mean positive as in pretending that things are not seriously dangerous right now. I mean positive as in human beings displaying that which within us, which is noble and good and true and beautiful, in the collective field of our collective conversations, and not just in our individual relationships. That's a beautiful possibility. It's a beautiful possibility for our lives. It's a beautiful possibility for our country. And because of the power of our country, it's a beautiful possibility for the world. For any of you who might be watching who are not Americans, I know many people who are watching from other countries are Americans. I know many of you are not Americans. I know sometimes it's people who are not Americans who, even more than Americans, really understand how important it is that Americans wake up. And so if you're an American, please join with me in this effort. And if you're not an American, please pray for us, which I think you probably already do. And know that something glorious, something noble, something good, something beautiful, and something true is possible in politics, no differently, no more, but no less than is true in the arts or the sciences or architecture or painting or education. To say that these are revolutionary times means that it's a revolution of consciousness which is occurring everywhere and in every corner, and we can't leave any corner out. And the prayer is always the same. Dear God, use me. So now we close our eyes, and we now call upon the Spirit of God in whatever form that Spirit appears to us, to fill our minds and fill our hearts. Dear God, we come to you placing this relationship or that in your hands, placing this burden or this decision to be made, this situation or that in your hands. Tonight we come to you, dear God, and place in your hands this powerful, sometimes beautiful, but increasingly toxic field of energy, which is the American presidential campaign. And we take this moment to surrender to you, dear God, any of the personal grievance that we have towards any candidate, any of the candidates that we are judging, any of the candidates that we are attacking with our thoughts. In this moment, we realize that that is an attack upon ourselves. In this moment, we realize we are hurting ourselves. And so we pray, dear God, that we might see all of the candidates as you do. Show us the innocent child of God in Donald Trump. Show us the innocent child of God in Hillary Clinton. Show us the innocent child of God in Marco Rubio. Show us the innocent child of God in Bernie Sanders. Show us the innocent child of God in Ted Cruz. Show us the innocent child of God in John Kasich. Show us the innocent and the beautiful and true in those who agree with us, dear God. And show us the innocent and the beautiful and the true in those who do not agree with us. In this moment, allow yourself to feel how much tension and burden and tightness and toughness falls away as you have given up this consistent pattern of attack thoughts by which we view political candidates at this time. Dear God, we know there's nowhere to run. It's everywhere. It's an oceanic field that we cannot just turn off. All of us are living at the effect of this insanity. And at this moment, we shift our thinking to the realization that we don't want to turn away. Rather, we give of ourselves and we say, dear God, use us. Enliven our thinking, our minds, our hearts. Expand our understanding. Create among us, dear God, a new possibility. A new possibility whereby our collective decision-making represents the best that we can be. And guide each of us, dear God, in how you would like us to play a part. The candidate that our heart leads us to. The work that our conscience leads us to. As we now join beyond the realm of the body, beyond the realm of the personality, beyond the realm of the mistakes, beyond the realm of the opinions, with all the other people who share with us, responsibility for this country and for every other. In this moment, we pray that the Spirit of God come upon us and lift us up above our own weakness to our strength. Deliver us from our fear to our love, from our littleness to our magnitude, from our grandiosity to our grandeur. And now we join with each other and with everyone in the world who is praying for the same thing, that we might find our collective love for each other, our collective strength, our collective wisdom, our collective nobility, our collective enlightenment. We turn away now from self-centeredness and inappropriate focus just on me. We move now from my life to our life, from my home to our planet, from my decisions to our decisions. And we stand within that space as Spirit guides us to do right now. The Spirit of God pouring forth upon us a natural inheritance of wisdom and power and strength. May the hand of God be upon you. See the hand of God upon the person to your left and the person to your right. With your inner eye, see the hand of God upon all those who are gathered with you. As we pray that collectively we shall be lifted up, that not only as individuals, but as nations and as a species, we shall serve the good, the beautiful, and the holy. We place our country in the hands of God. Whatever nationality of anyone in this prayer, we join with each other as we all place our countries in the hands of God. We place our planet in the hands of God. We place ourselves in service to the love that heals all things. And with this thought, conceive and shall give birth to something beautiful and something true. For there is no spot where God is not. There is no darkness. His light does not cast out. There is no toxicity or fear. Miracles shall not remove. Knowing this, we give thanks, and together we say, Amen.